What's up, guys? This is GhostRobo, and we are back with Lost in Shadow. We are back with Spangle, who, if you look closely, is actually an oh-so-gorgeous female butterfly. But if you remember, we were looking for the last eye to move on to the train station, and I found that if we turn this weird lever here, we will be on our way to that last eye down below. This is going to open up a gate, and now we will be able to go down and obtain the last eye. If you also remember, we were talking about game collections, and it was cut a little bit short. Surprised by how long we had been going for in that first episode. As we crawl our way, little new control command here. So I wanted to resume a little bit about game collections. Here's another memory. What's it say? A trap. Someone must have put it here. And we get heavier. Yes. That's a very lame trap that they put there. Shadow corridors. These strange-looking doors lead into a shadow corridor, an area of space completely separate from the real world. Blah, 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 blah. Alright, so here we go. A new special little level here. So yeah, game collections. What games do you save? What games don't you save? I was, for a while, in this really bad habit of anytime I'd listen to a podcast, because, I listen to quite a bit of audio gaming goodness. I listen to Weekend Confirmed, I listen to the Rebel FM, I listen to Giant Bombcast, I listen to Player One podcast, Cheap Ass Gamer, CADcast, all sorts of podcasts. And so anytime I hear them talking about a game that was super influential or super great or something that I just had not played, I would go out and buy it. So whether it was, Beyond Good and Evil, which I actually have never played, or whether it was one of the older Final Fantasies that I just never got around to, or even a game that I started, such as Final Fantasy X, and never actually ashamedly finished, I went back and purchased just because I heard them talking about how grand it was. And I can safely say that I've never purchased, or never beaten, rather, any of those games that I purchased in that way. There's a lot of backtracking so far in Lost in Shadow. It's reminding me more and more of Limbo, albeit without the spooky atmosphere and with more environmental elements as opposed to just solving the puzzles by pure control navigation. There's a lot of environmental manipulation, etc., etc., etc. I don't believe we can access the train station this way, so we're going to have to go back and jump along these floating platforms. But what games do you hold on to? Because I've held on to all those games that I think one day I'm going to get to, whether they're from PlayStation 1 to PS3 to 360 to Super Nintendo. I've held on to those. I've also held on to any game that, as soon as I play it, I know this is something that I'm going to want to remember, or if not just remember, go back and actually play. So BioShock, Alan Wake, games like that, Mass Effect 2, those are recent examples, but even obvious ones, Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, games that are landmark for myself personally and for the industry I like to hold on to. But what do you like to hold on to? Let me know in the comments below. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to games and Wii games and 360 games and all sorts of games is the Game of the Year discussion that has kind of come to a close now. Most people seem to be favoring Red Dead Redemption above all else, and to me that's kind of a shocker because, as you'll see in my Game of the Year 2010 countdown, which is now on number 6, I do not have RDR in there at all. It was probably number 11 or 12 for me, and doesn't really live up to the same amount of greatness that some people seem to think it lived up to for them. And I think the main reason is due to the type of game that it is, and the fact that it's an open world game that thrives on you being a character within a world. Not to say that those aren't great games, because I absolutely love being a cool character immersed in a world. That's my favorite part about Mass Effect 2, my favorite part about Heavy Rain, feeling like you're a part of this story, part of this adventure, part of this world. Well, that's kind of cool. It's like, we're going through glass prisms or something as we move from deep background to shallow background and all over the place. We're hitting another shadow door here. So I love games with engrossing stories and engrossing character development. What is this little fountain of youth here? What do we do? Spangle, give us a sign. Your beautiful, beautiful form. Give us a sign. Or not. But to me, when you look back on a game like that, especially Red Dead, which isn't very set piece based, how can you have great memories? Because the greatness of the game is while you're there, while you're playing, while you're immersed in that world and having a great time being a cowboy. And I hear people say over and over again, things are getting really crazy now, rotating the world. I hear people saying over and over again, I just love being a cowboy. It's the first great Western game. And that's fine and good, but I'm no longer that cowboy, right? I'm no longer John Marston. I'm no longer part of that world, and therefore, it doesn't hold the same weight in my mind. I look back and think, what did I do that was grand in that game? Well, I rode my horse a lot. I collected a lot of flowers. I chased a lot of animals. I saw a lot of funny glitches, and then those sort of things, but I don't have anything to say, wow, RDR, that mission was fantastic, or that specific story occurrence was incredible. I had that with Mass Effect 2, because while the game does rely on, that was a bad jump. Whoops, we're a little bit lighter now. While the game does rely on, we're controlling this minecart here, but there's nothing to control. Should have said activate, not control, because we're not really doing much with it. We just hit B and here we go! Mario style through the world. I have those memories of Mass Effect 2 of that final hour and a half that was just so epic and so emotional and just a crazy wrap up to the game, despite the little wackiness of the final boss. I don't have that with Red Dead Redemption. What can you remember about those missions? Oh, I rode from point A to point B. Oh, I went and talked to Bonnie 6 times. Oh, I defended this hideout from, faceless, nameless thugs. Oh, I rode the river. Now, there is one moment from Red Dead Redemption that I can't fail to mention, which is when you first enter Mexico and that song starts playing, and it's just fantastic. That's a unmeasurable moment that I will not forget, but that was much more of a cinematic presentation style thing than an actual gameplay moment. And when I'm looking for my best game of the year, I'm looking for something with great gameplay, with huge ominous towers that stand in the distance, with late title cards that come 25 minutes into the game. And while Red Dead Redemption does have a very cool ending, and will probably ultimately be a memorable title from this generation, I don't think it can be qualified as Game of the Year, maybe as Experience of the Year. But again, this is my fundamental issue that I'm taking with Wii games and with 360 and PS3 games. I need the game to have some mechanic that draws me in, not just the presentation. And I think that's why some people have a hard time justifying Heavy Rain as a Game of the Year. There's all sorts of these shadow doors now. I don't know if they're optional or not. I'm assuming that they are not. I don't know why they'd be here if they aren't optional. I'm hoping that there's some eyes hidden in here or something that we need to collect. Swinging lamps. Okay, we can swing lamps to move the angle of shadows. Okay, it's starting to get a little bit more complex, as you can see. There's a lot. We probably are supposed to move that lamp right there. We're not good at jumping. Shadow Boy is no Mario. Just face it, plain and simple. He doesn't have his athletic game up to par. Oh yes. All right, so Spangle is now shaking these shadows. I'm guessing we're gonna have to jump right about now. That's kind of cool. But I need my games to have a good mechanic, and I love presentation, and Heavy Rain was all about presentation, but it still had a mechanic. It still had a memorable mechanic of scenes where you're making huge decisions, of scenes where you're escaping from a burning building, of scenes where you have to decide if you're going to shoot someone or not. And yes, you can say there were moments where you had to decide if you were going to shoot someone or not in Red Dead Redemption, but for me, they just did not measure up in any way. What is this yellow thing over here? Let's see. What happens when we touch this? Nothing. Can Spangle do anything for us? No. There's a lot of weirdness going on that I'm not 100% certain of what exactly it is. The tower has defense mechanisms in place. Alright. The Shadow of Lost in Shadow is kind of the captain of the obvious. They're kind of giving us a lot of nothing. No bang for our buck here. They're kind of just telling us, path to tower. Thank you. As if we are a very illiterate and retarded boy who needs all the help that he can get. And we're cruising through levels now. They're a little bit shorter. Go to the next area? Yes. Why would we not go to the next area? That seems like a very silly decision. But we're now on the pillar path, and so far I have to say that I'm enjoying the game. And if you have not picked it up yet after the first episode, I know some people were interested from that first walkthrough. I would say give it a go. It's a budget price title. It's a budget price title. Budget title priced at $39.99. As we now fight against the castle defense mechanisms here. Why would they want to hurt a poor Shadow Boy? It doesn't make much sense. But for $39.99, I don't think you can go wrong. Some people may say, hey, Limbo is only $15, and that's going to be a similar experience with more mood. But this looks to be much more in depth, as you can already see by the different ways that we're able to manipulate the shadows, and it creates some pretty cool effects. This is only the bottom of the tower. YouTube listeners, this is only the bottom of the tower, and now we are heavier because of it, to the first floor. I hope that doesn't count as one of the 60 stages, because otherwise we're at probably, 6 or 7? I don't know what our endgame goal here is. I assume it's to go and fight that faceless armor guy that ripped our body, or ripped our shadow, rather, from our body. And we are committed to delivering victory all day, every day. So we will definitely be getting back at Mr. Armor as we rotate this little gold platform here with Mr. Spangle. But what was your Game of the Year? How do you feel about Game of the Year? Do you feel like there should be a different kind of evaluation for Game of the Year? I almost feel like it's detrimental to both games. Some people will say it's very detrimental, or both groups rather. Some people will say, it's very hard to judge games from early in the year. Well, I also say that it's very whoa, that's a very thin platform. I also say it's very hard to judge games from late in the year because they're so fresh in your mind. You kind of have this, self regret or lack of confidence in your decision. You're like, oh, that's recent. Maybe I don't like it as much as I will in 6 months. I'm at the same. Whoa, no, that's going to be bad for our weight. We're trying to gain weight here, and that's not going to be good for it. So let's rotate this platform all the way around. Uh-oh. Come on, Spangle. There we go. It's hard to look back and say, oh, what did I think of a game that came out in January? But at the same time, I feel it's difficult to assess something that's so new in the future. I almost feel like there should be 2 separate scores when you play a game. You should give one score for what did you think of the experience, what did you think of the game, how did you like it, what the mechanically, graphically, presentation-wise, what did that all feel to you? Say you give it an 8.5. Well, maybe then you say posterity-wise, it's not as good. It doesn't hold as much worth because I know that this game was more of a diversion than anything else. And while it's a fun diversion, it isn't going to hold merit in the end of the year. So maybe you give it a 7.0. And I almost feel like, as crazy as it sounds, assessing the game directly after playing it may be the best way to determine what your true game of the year is, because that's when you're right in the moment, and that's when something like Red Dead Redemption could hold more value. And maybe I'm at fault for not rating them early enough. Oh, there's a spider beast down here, if you can see him. We'll highlight him with Spangle. Looks like there are going to be some enemies, which I didn't know were there or weren't there going to be. But Red Dead Redemption, had I assessed it right from the beginning when I first completed the game, I would have given it a much higher mark. It probably would have surely been in my top 10, but now in retrospect, it is not. And so, when IGN gives a 10.0 to Grand Theft Auto 4, that doesn't necessarily mean that Grand Theft Auto 4 is going to be their game of the year, but perhaps they could give us a little bit more insight if they said, hey, here is our game of the year ranking for this game. As crazy as that sounds, here's something for the future of what this game means to us for the year. Because what it means as a score and as a success or a failure as a game may not be the same as what it means as a game of the year candidate or as a landmark title in your life. Rusty Sword acquired. I didn't know there was combat in Lost in Shadow. That's kind of exciting. Now if we press B, we're getting some slashy on here. That's kind of cool. Alright, I acquired a sword. The real thing is rusty and old, but its shadow makes for a perfect blade. See, that is the brilliance of the Shadow World. If you go to the Shadow World, you'll be happy to know that all your things that may be broken or bad are all going to be just good as new. So you have that old hat that's very dirty and has a lot of grime and dust on it. It's going to be brand new. You have that broken favorite chair that you used to sit in when you were a little kid. It's going to be brand new. I'm just happy I don't have to face these monsters with my bare hands. Me too. If you're in the Shadow World, you don't have to face monsters with your bare hands. You don't have to face your fears with your bare hands. You can face everything in a alternate dimension, in a very secondary and non-direct fashion. And I think we're going to wrap this up as we approach 2F. Who knows what that means? Probably second floor. If I'm a smart guy, I would have to venture to say it means second floor. But that is episode 2 of our Lost in Shadow walkthrough. Shaping up to be a pretty fun game. I'm looking forward to episode 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many it takes. We will get there. Thank you very much for watching. Please check out my Microbot walkthrough that's currently going on, my Game of the Year stuff that's up both here on my channel and on TGN Games. And look for some Call of Duty stuff, because I think I've finally gotten out of my slump, and so we'll be seeing some cool videos from Black Ops gameplay. My top 5 movies of the year from 2010, that should be a fun one, and my kind of diatribe on internet hype wagon and what it means to society. So look forward to those. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, we will see you later.